Good afternoon. Welcome to Dateline Hamden on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home and Hamden's home for community radio. We have a return guest we love having in the studio today, Lauren Garrett, who's now the Democratic mayor or candidate in Hamden. We've never introduced you that way before. The Democratic Party candidate for mayor in Hamden. It's been a long road, and now you're in the home stretch. Lauren Garrett, thanks for coming back to Dateline Hamden.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
But you know what I'm dying to ask you, right?
Go ahead.
Oh, come on. You follow this campaign. What would a reporter want to ask you?
I'm not going to give you any fuel right now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Lauren, have you been shopping lately? You buy anything at a store recently?
Yeah, sure.
How scared were you?
Of getting accosted at a store?
Yeah. Are you scared to go shopping? You clutch your pocketbook? Do you have a male bodyguard with you or anything?
No.
Oh, cause it's interesting because I don't live in Hamden, but I was shocked to discover that apparently it's scary to shop in Hamden. It's not scary to shop in New Haven. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I think that there are people who are trying to benefit off of scare tactics, which is pretty terrible. So crime is actually going down in Hamden right now.
Tell me about that.
Well, I've met with the chief of police. We're seeing a downward trend in crime. And
do you have any stats on that or anything?
No.
Like that, what's that from last year when it went back up? Or
looking year over year from 2020 to 2021, we're seeing a downward trend. And I would appreciate it if the police would release some of these statistics.
Yeah, but they don't want you to get elected. Just let's be honest about it, Lauren. Okay, so there are a couple of factors to unpack there. Okay, so I'm biased because I come from New Haven and I don't live in Hamden. But Hamden's not, I don't believe New Haven is a dangerous city. I know people can disagree about that. But I don't know anyone who's scared to shop in New Haven. Now, Hamden, whether it's gone up or down, has a fraction of the crime in New Haven. But apparently some people really are scared. We had a reporter go with a candidate for the council who knocked on a door, and a woman said in a nice neighborhood where, I'd be scared not to shop. I think they might arrest me for not being rich enough or something. And she said, no, I'm kidding. But she said, I'm scared to shop. I will not go there unless my husband to go to a store. So I guess this is something real. And then your Republican opponent was on, Ron Gambardella, and I said to him, are you scared to shop? And he said, no. He said, I don't think it's scared to shop. But he said, people really are scared. He said, it's a real thing that especially seniors are scared to go to stores and go to North Haven and offer. Is that true?
So people are scared, and I do hear that on the doors as well. But I think that their fear is based on over-reporting crime.
All right, so yeah, basically Gambardella said it was my fault. He said, you guys in the media report crime, so everyone's scared out of their mind.
So they're saying it's Paul Bass's fault?
Well, the media. I'm thinking it personally,
yeah. So yeah, it's not just the media though, because the media will run a story, but then it gets broadcast over social media, a dozen more times.
But that's been happening forever. Why now in Hamden? Now nationally, and Hamden was no exception, there was an increase in gun crime and homicide. So what was it, 6 homicides in Hamden this year? That I don't want to be mean or discount it, but that it's not always, but it's not usually random. It's not usually you walk down the street, you get hit by a bullet. Now, once in a while you hear things like that, and that can happen in Chester, by the way. It can happen anywhere in the country. But if you're walking around New Haven, you're walking around Hamden, there's a better chance you can get run over by a car, unfortunately, or, or something like that, get struck by some secret disease. So numerically, it's not really a risk, but something's happening that people are thinking about. It's not like they never reported crime before. TV, not being honest without making jokes, TV just basically reports crime, right? Mm-hmm. That's easy to do. And now you have, I guess you have another opponent who runs a crime website to let people know about every crime. And people deserve to know about crime. If there's an incident at TGIF, we write about that because there are issues raised there. Or when there's spillover violence in New Haven, Louisville gangs or people targeting each other at night at some street, we'll report that. And that's unsettling. It's not like you get in danger if you go shopping anywhere. But, it's real and it needs to be reported. So what's different now, Lauren?
I think it's really just the people being at home and going on Facebook, people listening to, the radios and hearing every dispatch call, every 911 call.
And there are a lot. We have thousands a day in New Haven.
Right. And I think that it gets people going, and then it just gets over-reported. Now, I want to make people feel safe. That's my job.
Uh-huh.
And I think that there are a lot of ways that we need to talk about crime so that we're not just dealing in emotion, we're dealing with preventing crime through economic development, through outreach to at-risk communities. You know, when you're talking about any kind of gang violence, like in New Haven, over patrolling and using police to respond to crime doesn't solve the problem. You need outreach into the community. You need mentors, and that's what takes care of the problem. That's what reduces the violence. So, you know, I want to make sure that we're looking at ways to reduce violence rather than being reactionary.
Although you also need both, right? You want to get a cop if someone's shot. You want to come to the scene, right?
Absolutely. I know that we need police, you know, to respond to crime, but we also need to prevent crime from happening in the first place.
So some of that you talked about economic development, and everyone kind of agrees in Hamden. I think across the aisle, you guys have brought in the outreach workers, Len Jihad's group. I mean, so is there a consensus on that, or?
Yeah, and actually the police department released a report that was required through the Police Accountability Bill on their need for like a crisis response team, social workers. And in this report, the police themselves said that social workers are better equipped and can better handle certain mental health crises. So, you know, the police recognize that we need social workers, you know,
so then
helping.
why are certain conservative elements in the police community, not the whole force, obviously, why are some of them concerned about this election and want to make sure Republicans elected?
I think it's a financial piece. I think that, you know, police officers have a huge opportunity for overtime. And actually, both my Republican opponent, and I believe that overtime needs to be reduced.
Right. He suggests hiring retired cops. What do you think about that?
I think you might have a problem with grievances. You know, are the retired cops just working half time? We hire police officers who have been serving in other departments quite regularly. Oftentimes you'll see Hamden police officers retire and go work in another community.
Right, especially New Haven. Anytime we write a cop of the week about a officer of color and you guys looking to diversify, you snag them. They say, yeah, we'll take it, more money, not quite as dangerous. Yeah.
So we do this already, and we're not seeing financial results.
What does that mean? That you're not for the lateral hires? That doesn't do the trick, or you need more of them?
What I'm saying is that when we see Hamden hire laterally, it's not reducing our costs.
But is that because enough people are leaving, or the demand's increasing?
Right now, we're down several police officers because they have not been hiring. There was a little snafu where they didn't put the employment opportunity on police officer standards and training website. So we weren't creating lists for civil service. So without being able to hire police officers, we're now down like 20 police officers.
Oh, so would you want to fill those ranks or not?
Well, we're required to.
So if you're elected, you would support that?
Yes, we're required to have, 102 officers in the police department because of a concessions deal that was reached with the police union, the mayor's office.
So
and
getting
the
back to
Legislative
how
Council.
we reduce overtime, would you hire above that? Do you think filling those 20 slots will do the trick? So how do you feel about the proposal about retired cops?
I don't think that we need to hire retired cops. I think that we need to supplement with social workers, and that will reduce the burden on our police officers when the social workers are responding to mental health calls.
And what about in terms of those 20 slots? Is there a reason to go with younger cops who have a whole career ahead of them as opposed to retired cops, even though those younger cops get benefits? Part of Gambardella's, your opponent's point, was that they don't get the benefits because they already get those through retirement, so it'll cost the town less.
I think that we need to have newer police officers. I think that's probably better for having a police department that is going to be invested in community policing, not really interested in kind of the old school policing process and mentality.
All right. We got into the weeds real fast, Lauren, because we always do. But let me step back for a second. Let's tell people you're listening to Dateline Hamden, WNHH-FM. We have Lauren Garrett here, who just won a stunning victory. Not only because she won, but because of the scope of it and the ticket she ran with in the Democratic primary for mayor in Hamden. On September 14th, she unseated an incumbent Democrat, Kurt Lang. And not only did that, she did that by a 2-1 margin with a team of how many people running for council and board of ed?
Well, so right now our team is 20. We had 4 board of ed, 4 at-large council, town clerk, and me. So that was 10 people for the primary. And now we have 20, a team of 20.
So there's 10 council, not 10 districts?
There are 5 board of ed spots, 5 Democrats running for board of ed.
So on your slate is 5 board of ed?
Yes, this
4
time.
at large?
Yes.
Mayor and clerk, and how many districts?
9.
All right, we added up to 20. Okay,
Yeah.
So not only did Lauren win an upset primary by a big margin, she did it with a team rather than alone. And this was a team of people trying to move the Democratic Party in a more progressive direction because Hampton has turned bluer. You're up to, I looked at the numbers, 19,000 Democrats versus 4,000 Republicans. That's almost 5-1. But within the party, you moved in a direction that I think we began to see in 2016 when, after the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign, Josh Elliott was elected state rep on a very progressive platform with Bernie Sanders reporters. And we've seen that movement. And we saw the results at the polls of years of grassroots work as a team where your entire slate won by 2-1. You did it as a team. And although I believe you'll probably break into factions if you all win, because that always happens. Well, that's down the road.
We've been working really well together as a team. We definitely have shared values. And I think that we will disagree here and there, but because we have become friends, I think we'll be able to work it out very civilly. And I don't think that you're going to continue to see these late night council meetings.
So you think it'll be more civil?
I think so, yes.
And before we get, and I want to ask you about those shared values. So anyway, now this general election. So before I joke you and give you a hard time about revolutions eating their own, you still got to win the general election.
We do.
You have a Republican opponent, Rand Gambardella. You have a guy, you have a sometimes opponent, not opponent, now opponent again, Al Lotto, who was going to run the independent party, then dropped out, and then did the harder work of petitioning on. And there are signs going up for him.
So he had already petitioned to be.
Oh, he had?
Yeah. So he had petitioned to be an independent, and so now what he's doing is a write-in. So he had to register as a write-in candidate.
But so he didn't take the position he petitioned for.
He had, yet he couldn't.
Okay, I'll ask him about that because I'm here to ask you about you. Daniel Hunt asks, thank you for listening, Daniel. When you become mayor, that's kind of probably like the beginning of that question. Will you change some of the department heads in the town?
So I think that's probably a question I would prefer to answer during the transition time. But I think that there will probably be a few that I'll change. I think that it's important for me to surround myself with people that I trust and people who can handle what I want from them. What I've been going around talking to voters about some of the things that I want to do in Hamden, and I think that I'll have to find some people who are equipped to do that job.
So anyone in particular you want to mention or not?
No. Okay. But I also think that, there are some positions that are that I have to keep. I cannot fire. I cannot replace because of state statute. So police chief, fire chief.
So what is it, the goals that you're telling people you can accomplish? What are you going to accomplish if you're mayor?
We are going to get control of our finances. And we're going to be very transparent with how we do that. So I think that creating a 5-year plan is critical. Businesses want to see that we have a plan, that we're stabilizing our mill rate. And I think that we owe this to families in Hamden, to residents in Hamden, so that they can see what our...
People can plan ahead. Stabilize meaning cut it or keep it?
Stabilize just means that we are... that we're not seeing these massive increases in our taxes.
So you're not saying no new taxes, you're saying you try to avoid massive increases.
I'm saying both. I really think that we can get control of our taxes, but it's going to take a lot of administrative work. So sending our contracts out to bid, making sure that the contracts that we have, we've got a couple private public partnerships going on in Hamden right now with the ice rink, golf. I think that we can do better. I think that we can get a better deal for our taxpayers. So I'd like to evaluate those contracts. There's so much that we can do with a lot of the contracts that exist throughout our budget. And then it's going to be all about, negotiating with unions, making sure that we're not giving out exorbitant raises to department heads. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at.
All right. Your Republican opponent has suggested cutting from 95 to 50% the increase you're going to do for people's assessments of property that they declare. If they buy new equipment at a factory, you normally pay 95% of the assessed value the first year. He said giving them incentive to invest in more equipment in their property and only in the first year just assess them at 50% of that. That it's no loss to the town, he says. It's new money, but I guess it'll create more. What do you think about that?
Well, so we already do some of that stuff. So we have incentives for businesses when they are increasing the value of their business, any kind of modifications that they're doing. When they have to go out for a building permit, we reduce those building permit fees. And then we also have the ability to give them a break on the new tax generation from the increase in assessment. So we do that kind of stuff already, but it does have to go through the Economic Development Commission. It has to get negotiated. It's a nice idea, but I think that you also have to understand that there are already these bodies that you have to work with in order to get these goals
How about the
accomplished.
racial change in the town? So Hamden has gradually become less all-white, right? And the fast-growing group is Hispanics, but there's obviously an established black community that's grown. Your team is, what, is it half white, half non-white?
Yes.
And
I think it's actually, I think it's more than half non-white.
And was that a conscious decision to try to put together a team that more reflected the town?
Yes and no. I mean, we were looking for people who had, a very diverse group of life experience and professional experience. And we found the best people that we could find. And this is the slate that we came up with. And I think that it is such a pleasure to work with all of the people who are running with me. And what's really exciting is that I can look to them for help with the transition. We have somebody who's a transportation planner.
We wrote about him.
Yep. We have someone who is in workforce development. We have
Who's that?
Dominique Baez. We have several people who have their MBA. We have in the second district, John Alston. He is he's an auditor. So there are all these people that can really lend a hand in making sure that we have a smooth transition, that we keep our eye on everything that we need.
Anthony Brown writes in, and thank you, Lauren. Anthony Brown writes in, thank you, Anthony, for listening. This is interesting. Mr. Paul Bass again talking around the issue and around the elephant in the room, which is the running for mayor of Hamden, talking gang violence like any crime in New Haven, Hamden, West Haven isn't as important until it affects the white community. This is always a subject in talk show because the black community isn't that important. Talking around the black community all the time. Thank you, Anthony. So I think what I was getting at is that people get scared if they think something's going to affect them, and white-run media and politicians tend to be more upset as long as it's contained within the black community. It's okay. Because Southern Hamden, which is blacker on the west side, has more crime. I was in Chasmo's the other day, which is a bar where there was a shooting outside the bar. And it's actually a very safe bar, and they felt they were tarnished by that. But that is true that if more of the violence is affecting gang members, I think what Anthony's asking, should that be more on our radar than it is because those lives are just as important?
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that I see that crime is trending down, and I'm not afraid to shop in Hamden Plaza, in our shopping centers around town. But I do recognize that there are a lot of people who are experiencing violence. And violence creates more violence. So we know that statistically, if you have experienced violence, you're more likely to act out. So that's why it's really important to have trauma-informed policing. That's why it's really important for us to make sure that community members feel safe. And I think that every death is one too many. And I really want to make sure that Hamden is a safe place for everybody.
Danielle Hunt again says about the Youth Services Bureau. They have a staff of 3, 2 full-time, 1 part-time. For a small department, how can you grow it to fulfill the initiatives of in the town?
For youth services, we have a lot of community members right now who have created programming around our youth. And I think that we need to partner with all of these groups and make sure that we're reaching out to as many kids as we can.
So you say you could do more without necessarily spending more?
No, that's not. No, I'm saying that that's one path, but we also need to make sure that we are providing youth services with what they need to reach out to more people.
Mm-hmm. And Lauren Garrett, Hamden Middle School, the old middle school, there's been a lot of talk about what to put there. And for years, the town's had a contract with Mutual Housing, which is a nonprofit developer that wants to put affordable housing, subsidized housing apartments on that site. The neighbors are not happy. It's a historically polluted site that's been getting cleaned up. And there are a lot of concerns there from will it drag down their property values to has the process been transparent to what's the best use for the property to does the infrastructure of that neighborhood support growth, roads, water, flooding? What's your take on the whole thing?
So I think it's important for us to look at what the market rate is versus what the affordable rate is for housing. Do we need affordable housing in that particular location, or is the affordable housing rate already basically what the market rate is?
What do you mean what the market rate is?
Well, a market rate for for an efficiency or a 1-bedroom apartment or, a 3-bedroom apartment.
Are you saying the market is low enough there that will be in itself affordable housing if they build the market?
Potentially. I think that it's something
the question
that we
is
need
whether
to
it's
look
subsidized, right? Whether it's Section 8.
Yes, but I think that what the community is looking for is more of a community center, youth center, having more housing all in that area. I don't think that's necessary.
So you don't think it needs more housing?
No, I think that we need to listen to the community and have community events and work towards a common goal.
Okay. Schools, anything what we'd like to see happen in public education if elected?
I think that we need to make sure that we are looking at hiring more Black and brown teachers.
Mm-hmm. And why does that matter?
Because we need to make sure that the kids in our schools are well represented by our education staff. Mm-hmm. We have a population that is 60% Black and brown, and we need to have teachers that represent those children.
What's the percentage of teachers who are Black and brown?
It's around 10%.
Whoa! That's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I know that's a challenge a lot of departments. That's a big, I had no idea it was that big. Okay. And then any other major issues we're leaving out before we let you go? What's important that Lauren wants to let voters know that her campaign is all about?
Well, I think our campaign really is all about hard work and a diverse team. Mm-hmm. I could not do this all by myself. And we have this amazing team that has worked together, and we are knocking on as many doors as we can and reaching out to so many voters. And because of a huge team, we have huge volunteers, and our presence is felt all over Hamden. And I'm really excited for Election Day, and I hope that people are going to come out and vote for Row A.
Row A being the Democrats.
Yes.
And I just think you should take a bow about the primary. I think in politics today, people often complain about who has an agenda, if this team has too much power, when the real answer is for more people to get involved in politics. If you believe in something like the people who won the primary did, that you need to change the town and be more transparent, you had to deal with increasing racial diversity in the town, you had to deal more honestly with long-term fiscal issues, you had a set of ideas, and you had a large group of people who went out on their evenings and weekends to find out how many people they can get to agree with them and then go to the polls. I would say that is the future of politics if we want to have a better country and a better community. So good job in the primary.
Thank you so
much.
And
good luck to you and your opponents on getting people excited about the November 2nd election in Hamden, which is the one election to watch around here.
Thank you.
So Lauren Garrett, I asked you after primary if you'd come back. If you won, you said yes, and you did. If you win the general, can I ask you to come back and tell us what the first term would look like?
Sure.
All right. Lauren Garrett, Dateline Hamden, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a little break, and then we're going to continue talking about democracy, because there's another great story about democracy in New Haven. But something called the Democracy Fund, which is an only in New Haven phenomenon in Connecticut. We have the woman behind that who's coming on. We're going to take a little break here first. We're going to have the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. And you're always invited to fly free with us here at WNHH Hamden, New Haven's home for community radio.